47 points. Meghan Markle allegedly walked into a secret crisis meeting with one of Hollywood's most notorious fixers carrying a 47-point presentation on how to rehabilitate her shattered brand. Let that absolute audacity sink in for just a moment. While most people facing a public relations catastrophe might approach a crisis manager with humility, perhaps even a willingness to listen, sources claim Meghan arrived with what can only be described as a masterclass in missing the point entirely. The details of this allegedly leaked meeting are now sending shockwaves through both Hollywood and royal watching circles. And folks, what was reportedly discussed behind those closed doors paints a picture of an operation in complete and utter meltdown. The stakes here could not possibly be higher. This was not, according to insiders, some routine quarterly review of brand strategy. This was allegedly an emergency intervention, a desperate attempt to stop the bleeding after disaster upon disaster has plagued the Sussex name. From the Netflix documentary Backlash that had critics and viewers alike cringing, to the spectacular implosion of her Spotify podcast deal, to Instagram content that reportedly blindsided her own communications team, Meghan Markle has been hemorrhaging credibility at a rate that would make any seasoned publicist break out in hives. And so she allegedly turned to Meredith Maine, a woman whose reputation in Hollywood circles is built on rescuing the careers of celebrities who have seemingly passed the point of no return. But here is where this story takes a turn that even the most cynical observers did not see coming. The details of what transpired in that meeting reportedly came from someone who was actually present, someone who sources claim could no longer stay silent about what they witnessed. Allow me to translate what that means in plain English. Someone inside the Sussex inner circle, someone close enough to be in the room where it happened, was apparently so disturbed by what they saw that they felt compelled to share it with the outside world. That is not the action of a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. That is the action of someone who watched something so jaw-dropping that staying quiet was no longer an option. One source familiar with the situation put it bluntly. They said watching that meeting was like watching someone insist the Titanic was still floating while standing knee-deep in water. Another insider reportedly described it as the moment they realized no amount of professional expertise could overcome what they were dealing with. And they are absolutely right to be alarmed. Because what allegedly happened in that room reveals a Sussex operation that is not just struggling, not just facing challenges, but one that appears to be in complete and total crisis mode with no clear path forward. But the leaked details of what Meghan allegedly demanded during this meeting will leave you absolutely speechless. To truly understand the significance of this leaked meeting, we need to take a step back and examine the landscape of devastation that reportedly led Meghan Markle to seek emergency assistance in the first place. Her public image has taken hit after hit after hit, each blow more damaging than the last, creating a cumulative effect that has transformed her from a beloved Hollywood newcomer to someone industry insiders are increasingly hesitant to touch. The Netflix documentary, which was supposed to be their crowning achievement, their chance to tell their truth once and for all, instead became a masterclass in how to alienate audiences across multiple continents simultaneously. Critics savaged it, viewers mocked it, and perhaps most devastatingly, it failed to generate the wave of public sympathy that was clearly the entire point of the exercise. Then came the Spotify debacle, a humiliation of truly historic proportions. Archetypes, her podcast that was meant to revolutionize the audio space and establish her as a serious intellectual voice, was canceled after just one season. And let us be brutally honest about what that means. Spotify reportedly paid the Sussexes somewhere in the vicinity of $20 million for content, and what they received in return was so underwhelming that executives allegedly called them grifters. Grifters. That is not the kind of reputation you can simply spin your way out of with a clever Instagram post and a sympathetic interview. Enter Meredith Maine, and for those unfamiliar with her particular brand of Hollywood magic, allow me to explain. Meredith is what the industry calls a fixer, a crisis communications specialist who is brought in when celebrity careers are hanging by a thread. Her client list, though closely guarded, reportedly includes some of the biggest names who have faced some of the ugliest scandals. She does not handle routine publicity. She handles emergencies. She handles catastrophes. She handles situations where normal publicists have already thrown up their hands in defeat. The fact that Meghan allegedly sought her services tells you everything you need to know about how dire the situation has become inside that Montecito mansion. But here is a detail that should make everyone sit up and pay attention. According to sources, this makes Meredith approximately the 14th public relations professional connected to the Sussexes since they made their dramatic exit from royal life. 14 in roughly 4 years. Let that sink in for a moment. The average celebrity relationship with a publicist lasts years, sometimes decades. The Sussexes are allegedly burning through communications professionals faster than most people change their smartphone contracts. At what point do you stop blaming the staff and start examining the common denominator in all these failed relationships? And speaking of troubling patterns, sources claim that Prince Harry was notably absent from this particular crisis meeting. He allegedly learned about it through staff rather than from his own wife. The implications of that are staggering, and what it reveals about who is really steering the Sussex ship raises questions that demand answers. According to insiders who claim to have knowledge of what transpired, Meghan Markle arrived at the meeting with Meredith Maine carrying an actual presentation, not bullet points jotted on a napkin, not a general sense of what she wanted to discuss. A 47-point presentation on, quote, brand rehabilitation, end quote. 47 separate points about how to fix her image, reportedly created by Meghan herself, before ever hearing what a professional crisis manager might suggest. One source close to the situation reportedly said they had never seen anything quite like it, that it was as if she had already decided what the answers were before asking the questions. The alleged demands contained within this presentation reveal a mindset that sources describe as completely disconnected from reality. Meghan reportedly insisted on maintaining complete control over all narrative angles moving forward. She allegedly refused to consider any strategy that would require her to acknowledge past missteps or controversies. Let me translate that for you in case the implications are not crystal clear. According to these sources, Meghan wanted to rehabilitate her image without ever admitting that her image needed rehabilitating in the first place. She wanted the public to forgive sins she was not willing to confess to having committed. This is where things allegedly got truly explosive. Sources claim that at one point during the meeting, Meredith Maine attempted to explain a fundamental truth of crisis management. You cannot successfully rebrand without some element of accountability. The public, she reportedly argued, needs to see growth, needs to see acknowledgement, needs to see that the person they are being asked to give a second chance actually understands why they need one. According to insiders present, Meghan's response to this professional advice was less than receptive. One source paraphrased the exchange by saying it was like watching someone ask a surgeon to perform an operation but telling them which organs they were allowed to touch. The atmosphere in the room allegedly deteriorated rapidly after this clash of philosophies became apparent. Sources describe Meredith as initially professional and composed, someone who has dealt with difficult clients before and knows how to navigate challenging conversations. But even her legendary patience was reportedly tested by what she encountered. One insider claimed that Meredith was overheard saying something to the effect of, "You are asking me to build a house while refusing to let me lay a foundation." Another source suggested that the tension became so palpable that staff members in adjacent rooms could sense something had gone terribly wrong. The meeting, which had been scheduled for 3 hours, reportedly ended abruptly after just 90 minutes. 90 minutes out of 180, half the time. And folks, when you are paying Hollywood crisis rates for a fixer of Meredith Maine's caliber, you do not cut meetings short because everything is going swimmingly. You cut meetings short because someone has decided that continuing would be an exercise in futility. One source allegedly described the early termination as the most expensive argument Meghan has ever walked away from. And given the history of expensive arguments in her orbit, that is really saying something. But what happened in the immediate aftermath of this abbreviated meeting sent shockwaves through the entire Sussex operation. And the fallout was even more catastrophic than anyone anticipated. The leaked details from this single meeting have illuminated a pattern of dysfunction that sources claim has been building behind closed doors for months, perhaps even years. This is not an isolated incident of difficult behavior or a single unfortunate clash of personalities. According to multiple insiders, the chaos that allegedly erupted during the Meredith Maine meeting is simply the most dramatic recent example of a public relations operation that has been spiraling into complete disarray. The Sussex communication strategy, if it can even be called that at this point, reportedly changes direction so frequently that staff members have given up trying to keep track. One former associate allegedly described working on Sussex public relations as trying to hit a moving target while blindfolded and standing on a spinning platform. They claimed that directives would come down one day, only to be completely reversed the next morning with no explanation offered for the contradiction. Another source suggested that junior staff members lived in constant fear of implementing a strategy in the morning that would be declared wrong by afternoon. The emotional toll of this environment, according to insiders, has been absolutely devastating for everyone involved. This chronic instability reportedly reached its peak with the now infamous Instagram video that sources describe as utterly cringe-inducing. For those who may have missed it, Meghan posted content to social media that allegedly blindsided her own communications team. They had no warning it was coming. They had no opportunity to prepare a media strategy around it. They learned about it the same way the public did, by seeing it appear on their screens. One insider claimed that watching their own client post content they knew nothing about was the final straw for several team members. They could not protect someone who would not let them do their jobs. The staff fallout from this environment has been predictable and devastating. Sources suggest that at least 3 junior staffers resigned in the weeks immediately following the disastrous Meredith Maine meeting. 3 people who presumably took these jobs believing they would be working on exciting, meaningful projects for high-profile clients, walking away because they simply could not endure another day of what they were experiencing. And these were not people being fired for poor performance. These were people actively choosing unemployment over continued association with the Sussex operation. Let that reality sink in. These professionals looked at their paychecks, looked at their working conditions, and decided that no amount of money was worth what they were being put through. The cumulative effect of this chaos has left Archewell, the foundation that was supposed to be the crown jewel of post-royal life, operating with what sources describe as a skeleton crew at best. An organization that launched with such fanfare, such promise, such ambitious declarations about changing the world, now allegedly struggles to maintain basic operations. One industry observer put it this way. They said watching Archewell stumble along is like watching someone try to run a marathon after shooting themselves in both feet. But Meredith Maine was not the only professional Meghan reportedly clashed with during this turbulent period, and the full scope of these confrontations reveals something even more troubling about the state of the Sussex Empire. While Meghan was allegedly embroiled in crisis meetings and staff meltdowns, Prince Harry found himself dealing with his own storms, notably without his wife by his side. His return to the United Kingdom for the Associated Newspaper's legal case placed him back on British soil under the most awkward of circumstances, facing not only the press he has long despised but also the silent treatment from his own family. King Charles, his own father, allegedly made deliberate efforts to ensure no reunion would occur during this visit. Sources close to the palace described it as a calculated swerve, a conscious decision to avoid any interaction that might suggest reconciliation was on the horizon. But here is the detail that sources say speaks volumes about the state of the Sussex marriage itself. According to insiders, Harry learned about the Meredith Maine meeting through staff members rather than from Meghan directly. His own wife allegedly did not inform him that she was engaging a high-profile crisis manager to address their shared public relations catastrophe. Let that absolutely staggering piece of information settle in your mind for a moment. Either Meghan did not think Harry needed to know about a major strategic decision affecting both their reputations, or she actively chose not to tell him. Neither explanation reflects a partnership operating in healthy communication. The disconnect between the Sussex co-founders has reportedly become impossible for those around them to ignore. One source described their current dynamic as two people running parallel businesses that occasionally intersect rather than partners building something together. Another insider suggested that Harry has increasingly retreated into his own projects and causes, finding more purpose in his military veteran work than in the broader Archewell mission that was supposed to define their new life. Whether this represents a healthy division of labor or a troubling sign of growing distance depends entirely on who you ask. What seems clear from multiple sources is that Harry finds himself in an extraordinarily isolated position. The United Kingdom, his homeland, the place where he spent the first 30-plus years of his life, has largely closed its doors to him. His father will not see him. His brother reportedly will not speak to him. The institution that defined his entire identity has moved on without a backward glance. And yet California, the promised land of freedom and fresh starts, has not exactly delivered the warm embrace he might have anticipated. Insiders suggest he struggles to find genuine connection in a Hollywood world that views him primarily as an accessory to his more famous wife. One particularly devastating quote from someone claiming knowledge of Harry's emotional state painted a picture of a man caught between two worlds that both seem to reject him in different ways. They said he is too American for Britain now, but he will never truly be American. He is too outside the royal bubble to go back, but he can never fully escape it either. He is trapped in a space between identities with no clear sense of where he belongs. If accurate, this assessment reveals a profound sadness at the heart of a man who once seemed so certain that leaving everything behind was the right choice. The fallout from this emotional and physical disconnect between Harry and Meghan was about to become impossible to hide from public view. The chaos exposed by the leaked Meredith Maine meeting does not exist in isolation. It fits a pattern that sources have been whispering about for years, a pattern of behavior that has allegedly left a trail of frustrated professionals, canceled contracts, and whispered warnings throughout the entertainment industry. The demands Meghan reportedly made during that crisis meeting echo demands she has allegedly made in countless other professional settings, creating a reputation that now precedes her wherever she goes. Consider the alleged demands related to returning to the United Kingdom for any official or semi-official purpose. Sources claim Meghan provided a list of requirements that included unprecedented security arrangements, specific protocol exceptions, and accommodations that would essentially require the royal family to treat her as she believes she deserves to be treated, rather than according to established precedent. One insider familiar with palace operations reportedly responded with a sentiment that amounted to "We do not want you here, love," which might lack diplomatic finesse, but certainly communicates the current temperature of that relationship clearly. The pattern extends far beyond royal interactions. Spotify executives reportedly experienced similar treatment during the partnership that ultimately collapsed in such spectacular fashion. Sources suggest that the creative differences cited in official statements barely scratch the surface of what actually occurred behind closed doors. One industry insider claimed that dealing with the Sussex team was like being handed $1 million budget and then being told you could not actually spend any of it without 17 different approvals. The deals that looked so promising on paper allegedly became nightmares of micromanagement and conflicting directives in practice. Netflix, the other cornerstone of the Sussex entertainment strategy, has reportedly faced its own challenges navigating this dynamic. While the documentary did eventually air, sources suggest the production process was far from smooth. One producer allegedly described the experience as constantly being second-guessed by people who did not understand how documentaries actually work, but were absolutely certain they knew better than everyone in the room. The content that finally reached screens was reportedly a heavily negotiated compromise that satisfied no one completely. The common thread running through all these accounts, if they are to be believed, is a fundamental inability or unwillingness to trust professional expertise. From royal aides to podcast producers to crisis managers, the same story emerges again and again. Meghan allegedly knows what she wants, refuses to be told it might not work, and then blames everyone else when things inevitably go wrong. One longtime Hollywood observer put it perfectly when they said the entertainment industry is full of difficult people, but most of them are difficult because they are perfectionists, and their track record earns them that indulgence. When your track record is a string of failures, being difficult stops being eccentric and starts being career suicide. But perhaps the most shocking fallout from this pattern of behavior was happening much closer to home, within her own family circle. While public relations chaos swirled around the Sussex operation and professional relationships continued to fracture, sources claim another relationship was quietly deteriorating far from the spotlight. Meghan's relationship with her mother, Doria Ragland, the one family member she has consistently praised and presented as her rock through every storm, has allegedly experienced significant strain in recent months. The woman who stood alone representing Meghan's family at the royal wedding, who has been photographed countless times entering and leaving the Montecito compound, has reportedly pulled back in ways that have not gone unnoticed by those in the Sussex orbit. The tension allegedly began to surface after the Netflix documentary aired, and viewers noticed how selectively the relationship was portrayed. Doria appeared briefly, spoke carefully, and sources claim she was not entirely pleased with how her participation was edited and presented. One insider suggested that Doria had hoped for a more substantial role in telling their story, only to find herself relegated to supporting character status in a narrative that centered almost exclusively on Meghan's grievances against the royal family. Whether this disappointment was expressed directly to her daughter remains unclear, but the shift in their dynamic reportedly became apparent to staff members soon after. Living arrangements have become a subject of particular speculation among royal watchers and Sussex observers. Doria was once believed to reside either on the Montecito property or in very close proximity, available for the kind of regular family interaction that Meghan has spoken about valuing so deeply. However, recent reports suggest this arrangement may have changed. Sources indicate that Doria has established more distance, both literally and figuratively, from the Sussex household. One insider described it as a grandmother who loves her grandchildren but can only take so much of the circus surrounding them. The implications of this alleged estrangement, if accurate, are profound. Meghan has systematically distanced herself from her father and his side of the family, relationships she has written off as toxic and irreconcilable. Her husband's family, the royal family of the United Kingdom, has been positioned as villains in her personal narrative. If her mother, the last family connection she publicly acknowledges and celebrates, is also pulling away, it would leave Meghan in an extraordinarily isolated position. One observer noted that you can be surrounded by staff and still be essentially alone, and if you have pushed away everyone who might tell you hard truths, you end up with only employees and enablers. This potential shrinking of her support system comes at precisely the worst possible moment. When your professional relationships are imploding, when your public image is in freefall, when the carefully constructed narrative you have been selling no longer convinces anyone, you need people around you who will be honest even when honesty is uncomfortable. You need people who care about you enough to say things you do not want to hear. The ripple effects of this isolation were about to surface publicly in the most unexpected and embarrassing ways. Industry insiders who once spoke about the Sussex brand with cautious optimism are now openly questioning whether anything can be salvaged from the wreckage. The combination of canceled deals, staff exodus, reported management difficulties, and relentlessly negative press coverage has created a perfect storm of career damage that even the most skilled crisis manager would struggle to overcome. And remember, Meghan allegedly just chased away one of the most skilled crisis managers in the business because she did not like what she was being told. The commercial reality facing the Sussexes is stark and getting worse by the day. The Spotify deal collapsed. The Netflix relationship, while technically ongoing, has not produced the flood of content that was promised or the cultural impact that was anticipated. The production company attached to their name has struggled to generate projects that actually move forward. Hollywood operates on momentum, and right now, the Sussex momentum is moving decidedly in the wrong direction. One entertainment executive reportedly said they would not touch a Sussex project right now with a 10-foot pole and someone else's money, which is as damning an assessment as you will hear in an industry built on flattery and false promises. The financial pressure this creates cannot be overstated. The Montecito lifestyle, the mansion that reportedly cost them somewhere around $14 million, the security costs that eat up enormous portions of their annual budget, the staff required to maintain the appearance of relevance, all of it requires constant cash flow. When Spotify was paying them an estimated $18 to $20 million, and Netflix was contributing another reported $100 million over multiple years, the math worked. As those deals dry up or fail to materialize into actual income, the math becomes considerably more challenging. Sources suggest that Meghan has been actively seeking new partnerships and opportunities, but the reception has been considerably cooler than she might have hoped. The reputation that precedes her now includes not just the management difficulties that have been reported, but the very public failures that everyone in the industry witnessed firsthand. One insider noted that Hollywood loves a comeback story, but there has to be something to come back from. And more importantly, there has to be evidence that the person has learned something from their failures. Without that, you are just asking people to sign up for the same disaster with a new contract attached. Faced with this increasingly dire reality, Meghan allegedly made a decision that stunned even the few advisors still willing to work with her. A decision that could either represent a bold new strategy or the final nail in the coffin of her professional credibility. In the aftermath of the leaked meeting disaster and the continued professional chaos, sources claim a significant power shift has occurred within the Sussex operation. Rather than acknowledge that perhaps, just perhaps, the revolving door of public relations professionals might indicate a problem with her approach, Meghan has allegedly decided to bypass traditional public relations entirely. The woman who reportedly arrived at a crisis meeting with a 47-point presentation now apparently believes she can manage her own image better than any professional ever could. This decision to focus on direct social media control, eliminating the middlemen and middlewomen who keep suggesting accountability and humility, represents either a brilliant innovation or a catastrophic doubling down on the very instincts that created this mess. Sources suggest Meghan views social media as a direct pipeline to the public, one that cannot be filtered or interpreted or shaped by people who do not understand her vision. One insider familiar with the new strategy described it as essentially becoming her own publicist, her own crisis manager, and her own content creator all at once. If that sounds like an enormous amount of work for someone who is also supposed to be a mother, a wife, a philanthropist, and whatever else the Archewell mission requires, you are beginning to understand the scope of the challenge. Harry's reported reaction to this shift has been a source of particular interest among those watching the Sussex dynamic. Sources suggest growing tension over who ultimately controls their shared public narrative. Is it Meghan, who seems determined to speak for both of them? Is it Harry, who occasionally ventures out for solo appearances and interviews that sometimes strike a different tone? Or is it some uneasy combination that leaves both of them dissatisfied and the public confused about what the Sussex brand actually represents? One observer noted that when you cannot agree on who is driving the car, you tend to end up in a ditch. What has emerged from multiple sources is not speculation about a marital split in the romantic sense, but rather discussion of a professional split that may be taking shape. Separate projects, separate strategies, separate public identities that occasionally overlap but no longer function as a unified front. Meghan pursuing her Hollywood dreams while Harry focuses on military veteran causes and his eternal legal battles with British tabloids. One insider described it as two people sharing a house and a marriage, who have essentially agreed to run different companies under the same umbrella name. Whether this represents a healthy evolution of their partnership or the beginning of something more concerning depends entirely on perspective. Some see it as a practical adaptation to their different strengths and interests. Others view it as the first visible cracks in a foundation that has been stressed beyond its capacity to hold. What this shift means for their future together, professionally and personally, raises the most uncomfortable questions anyone has dared to ask. The picture that emerges from leaked meetings, insider accounts, staff departures, and public failures is one of a Sussex operation more unstable than the public has ever fully understood. From the catastrophic crisis meeting with Meredith Maine to the fractured relationships with family members and professionals alike, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry find themselves at a crossroads that offers no easy paths forward. Every strategy they have tried has either failed outright or produced results so far below expectations that failure might have been preferable. Every relationship they have leaned on has either crumbled or shown signs of severe strain. The bigger question that this entire saga raises is whether Meghan's reported need for absolute control over every aspect of her public image is the very thing that has destroyed her opportunities to improve it. Professional after professional has apparently walked away after discovering that their expertise was not actually wanted, only their compliance. Crisis manager after crisis manager has reportedly been shown the door for the crime of suggesting that rehabilitation might require acknowledgement of what went wrong. At some point, a reasonable observer might conclude that the problem is not the advice being offered, but the person refusing to hear it. History offers cautionary tales of celebrities whose obsession with image management became the very thing that destroyed their images. The ones who micromanaged every photograph, every interview, every public appearance until the machinery of their fame became visible and the illusion could no longer be maintained. remained, the ones who surrounded themselves with yes people and pushed away anyone who might offer an inconvenient truth, the ones who believed so completely in their own narrative that they could not recognize when that narrative had stopped convincing anyone but themselves. Whether Meghan can avoid joining that list remains to be seen. She still possesses resources that most people can only dream of. She still has a platform that millions would envy. She still has, at least officially, a marriage to a prince and access to circles that were closed to her before she became the Duchess of Sussex. But resources mean nothing if they are squandered. Platforms are worthless if no one wants to listen anymore, and a title, however grand, cannot protect you from the consequences of choices made and relationships burned. Do you think Meghan can turn this around, or has the damage become permanent? Drop your thoughts below. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video is waiting, and you will not believe what is coming next.